The moment my ex asked me not to wear a costume I'd spent 6 months making, I knew something wasn't right. About 8 months earlier, my boyfriend and I had ended our relationship on good terms. It was a mutual decision, and while breakups are never easy, we managed to stay friendly. That was important because we shared the same friend group, and neither of us wanted things to become awkward. After the breakup, I focused on myself. I started eating healthier, going to the gym, and attending therapy. Slowly, I felt happier, healthier, and more confident than I had in a long time. My friends noticed the difference too. One of my biggest hobbies is cosplay. I've always loved it, but I usually chose characters that were completely covered up. As my confidence grew, I decided to challenge myself and create something different for the biggest convention in my city. A friend and I spent 6 months designing and building our costumes. We invested countless hours into every detail, and by the time the convention approached, I was incredibly proud of what we'd created. 3 weeks before the event, I shared a photo of my completed costume in our group chat and asked everyone for feedback. Almost immediately, my ex messaged me privately. He asked if I could please avoid wearing that costume because it might make his new girlfriend uncomfortable. I was confused. I asked what exactly was bothering her, but he wouldn't explain. He simply repeated that she'd be uncomfortable and hoped I'd choose something else. The problem was that this wasn't a last-minute outfit. I'd spent half a year working on it. There was no way I was abandoning all that effort because of someone I'd never even met. So I politely declined. When convention day arrived, I wore the costume. The response was amazing. People stopped me throughout the day to compliment the design, ask for photos, and talk about the character. It felt rewarding to see months of hard work finally pay off. That's when I finally met my ex's new girlfriend. From the start, something felt off. Every time someone complimented the costume, she'd make little remarks under her breath. Whenever people asked for pictures, she'd laugh or make sarcastic comments. The atmosphere became increasingly uncomfortable. I tried my best to ignore it. I stayed polite. I kept my distance whenever possible. I didn't want drama, and I definitely didn't want to ruin the convention for anyone. But the comments continued all day. Eventually, after the event ended, our group went out for dinner together. Things stayed relatively calm until one of our friends casually asked my ex's girlfriend whether she'd ever considered trying cosplay herself. Instead of simply saying it wasn't her thing, she looked directly at me and said she didn't need attention from strangers because she already had a boyfriend. The implication was obvious. After spending an entire day listening to passive-aggressive remarks, that comment finally pushed me over the edge. I told her she needed to stop acting competitive and judging me just because people had shown interest in my costume throughout the day. The moment I said it, she burst into tears. My ex immediately jumped in and demanded that I apologize. I refused. I told him I would apologize if she also apologized for the constant comments she'd been making since the morning. Instead of calming things down, the argument exploded. Friends started taking sides. Voices got louder. What began as a disagreement quickly turned into a full-blown shouting match involving nearly everyone at the table. The situation became so disruptive that the restaurant eventually asked us to leave. 5 days later, the fallout still hadn't settled. My ex claimed I had humiliated his girlfriend in front of everyone and insisted that I owed her an apology. When I refused, he threatened to leave the friend group entirely. The strange part was that I honestly didn't care whether he stayed or left. We weren't together anymore, and I wasn't responsible for managing his relationships. But several friends started pressuring me to apologize anyway. Not because they believed I was wrong. Not because they thought his girlfriend had behaved appropriately. But because they wanted the drama to end. That's what frustrated me the most. I felt like I was being asked to take responsibility for keeping the peace while everyone ignored what had caused the conflict in the first place. I never set out to embarrass anyone. I simply wore a costume I'd spent months creating. I wasn't trying to compete with anyone, attract attention, or cause problems. The attention came because of the work I put into the costume. And after enduring a full day of criticism, I finally responded. Maybe I could have handled that moment more calmly. Maybe I could have chosen different words. But it's hard to stay patient when someone repeatedly targets you and then expects you to stay silent. At the end of the day, respect goes both ways. If someone wants an apology, they should be willing to acknowledge their own behavior too.